On October 29, 2025, something impossible appeared again in our sky. The interstellar object known as 3I Atlas, catalogued 5 years earlier as a dying, ice-poor comet from beyond our solar system, was supposed to be gone forever. It had passed perihelion in 2020, escaped the sun's pull at 94,000 km/h, and was on a one-way trajectory toward the constellation of Hercules. Every model, every gravitational simulation said the same thing. We would never see it again. And yet, telescopes in Hawaii and Chile picked it up again. Faint, fast, coming back. At first, the discovery was dismissed as a misidentification, perhaps a fragment from an asteroid or a second Atlas comet. But the orbital parameters matched within 0.002%. The albedo, the rotational period, even the subtle polarization pattern of the reflected sunlight were identical. The probability that this was another object was less than 1 in a billion. 3I Atlas had somehow reversed course. The anomaly became undeniable when data from the Very Large Telescope, VLT, and the Pan-STARRS array confirmed its deceleration. A natural comet cannot slow down in deep space without an external force. No outgassing jets were detected, no dust plume, no visible tail. The object, roughly 180 meters across, was decelerating by 0.09 ms2. A rate consistent not with sublimation, but with thrust. So, scientists started asking a dangerous question: what could push an interstellar rock? By early November, the Deep Space Network began tracking weak narrow-band radio emissions near 3I Atlas. They were unlike any natural maser or plasma noise. The frequencies clustered around 1.42 GHz. The hydrogen line, the universal hailing frequency used by SETI. Then came the strangest part. The waveform repeated every 21 seconds. When a pattern was mapped into base pairs, it aligned with a fragment of the human genome, specifically a 46-base sequence from chromosome 7. Coincidence, artifact, or message? NASA released one brief statement. Data under review. Likely instrumental interference. Then silence. Observers from the European Southern Observatory reported that their remote data feeds went offline for maintenance. But one man kept talking. Dr. Elias Marenko, an astrobiologist from the University of Geneva, told Le Monde that the signal was biological in structure but synthetic in origin. He compared it to a genetic checksum, a kind of digital fingerprint of life. A week later, his accounts were deleted. His university profile vanished. His colleagues said he had taken a leave of absence. Meanwhile, 3I Atlas kept approaching, not toward the sun this time, but along a vector that, within error margins, intersected Earth's orbital path. Here's what we know. 3I Atlas has re-entered the inner solar system on a trajectory inconsistent with gravitational mechanics. It's emitting narrowband radio signals centered on 1.42 GHz with repeating DNA-like structure. At least one astrophysicist studying it has disappeared from public record. Here's what we don't. What force reversed its motion across interstellar space? Whether the radio signal is an artifact, a message, or a reflection of our own interference. And, perhaps most unsettling of all, why an object that once fled our system would ever decide to come back. When the first 1.42 GHz emissions were logged, SETI researchers hesitated to make them public. Narrowband signals can come from human satellites, radar reflections, even microwave ovens. But this wasn't one of those. The data showed Doppler drift consistent with an object moving at 47 km/s, far beyond any Earth-orbiting source. By November 3rd, 3 observatories, Green Bank, Arecibo's successor dish in Puerto Rico, and the Meerkat Array in South Africa confirmed identical readings. The emissions weren't constant. They pulsed at 21-second intervals, each containing a burst of exactly 4,608 bits. That number wasn't arbitrary. when plotted as a two-dimensional grid, 96x48, it formed a repeating lattice pattern resembling the molecular structure of deoxyribonucleic acid. It was elegant, too elegant. At first, skeptics proposed that the signal was an echo of Earth's own transmissions, a backscatter from past SETI pings that somehow reflected off the comet's metallic dust. But radar cross-section models didn't support that. 3I Atlas was far too small and irregular to return a coherent signal. Besides, the carrier wave contained harmonic overtones that no known radar produces. NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center issued a notice on November 5th describing it as a structured but non-linguistic emission. ESA's Gaia mission provided positional data showing the object had altered velocity again, decreasing by another 3 ms within 48 hours. No plausible explanation fit. Outgassing would have produced visual plumes. There were none. Solar pressure alone couldn't account for that rate of deceleration. So astronomers turned to thermal data. The James Webb Space Telescope, JWST, targeted 3II Atlas during a rare alignment window on November 6th. What it found stunned even the engineers. The nucleus registered at 320 K around room temperature. Natural comets, even those near the Sun, rarely exceed 180 K. Something inside was radiating heat, uniformly. The press didn't notice at first. The findings appeared briefly in a preprint on arcshift.org, then disappeared within hours. Mirror uploads on Reddit threads cited the DOI but returned 404 errors. Screenshots circulated. Infrared images showing faint geometric edges within the comet's coma, like hexagonal panels. The authenticity remains debated. Meanwhile, the radio pattern evolved. At precisely 00 UTC on November 7th, the signal shifted frequency from 1.42 GHz to 8.46 GHz, and the data rate doubled. The new bursts, when plotted, formed coordinate pairs. They pointed to right ascension, y00h00s, declination, y0 0000, the celestial intersection of the equator and prime meridian. Symbolically, that point corresponds to Earth's reference 0. Was it coincidence or calibration? No one at NASA or SETI officially commented. Only one internal memo leaked dated November 8th. Recommends suspension of public data release until source verification complete. Current media climate not conducive to responsible interpretation. By then, 3I Atlas had entered a solar distance of 0.95 AU, trailing a faint blue ion tail that defied solar wind direction by nearly 17 degrees, as if magnetically steered. Something about it was behaving like a probe, not a rock. Here's what we know. The signal persists, repeating in intervals too regular for random plasma phenomena. Its binary output aligns with organic molecular symmetries and now includes coordinate-like data. The object maintains an internal temperature inconsistent with any known comet composition. Here's what we don't. The energy source maintaining that heat. Whether the frequency shift was autonomous or reactive to our own transmissions, and whether 3I Atlas is still broadcasting or simply listening. By November 10, 2025, the world's space agencies were watching 3I Atlas in near real time. Its trajectory, once hyperbolic, had warped into something resembling a long, deliberate curve. Objects from interstellar space don't curve. They fall, accelerate, or slingshot past gravity wells. But 3I Atlas was doing the opposite. It was braking. Data from NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, JPL, showed that its heliocentric velocity had dropped below the solar escape threshold. In other words, it was no longer leaving the solar system. Somehow, the same object that had entered from the direction of Lyra 5 years earlier had decided to stay. Every model failed. The deceleration was smooth, not impulsive. Not a collision, not a gravitational assist. The heat emission, once constant, began to oscillate between 290 and 340 K in a repeating 41-minute cycle. That temperature rhythm matched nothing in known physics. It was as if the object was breathing. At first, scientists looked for natural explanations. Could it be a carbon-rich body generating heat through slow crystallization, a decaying isotope pocket trapped in the core? But the observed spectral lines were all wrong. No actinides, no decay products. JWST data instead showed sharp peaks at 10.6 mm and 4.3 mm, the signatures of silicon carbide and metallic titanium. Both are industrial alloys, not cosmic ices. When these findings leaked, astronomers began privately calling 3I Atlas the impossible comet. By November 11th, ESA's solar orbiter caught something else, a faint halo of charged particles expanding from its forward hemisphere. But the halo wasn't dispersing randomly. It rotated once every 6.4 hours around a fixed magnetic axis. That meant the object had a dipole field, a magnetic north and south. No natural comet has that. Something inside was generating current. Dr. Meera Shankar at the Indian Institute of Astrophysics described it best in her unpublished paper. It's behaving like an engine running idle in the dark. Then, on November 12th, all communications from solar orbiter went dark for 47 minutes. ESA cited unexpected power cycling. The timing coincided perfectly with 3I Atlas, aligning between the probe and the sun. When systems came back online, the magnetometer had recorded a pulse, 1.6 millitesla, lasting exactly 3.2 seconds. That field strength at 0.9 AU implies an energy release of several terajoules, the equivalent of a small fusion burst. Yet no optical flash, no plasma event, no radiation spike was observed. The comet's surface, according to the ALMA Observatory in Chile, remained strangely smooth. Polarimetric imaging suggested reflectivity consistent with metal ceramics. But where natural comets are irregular, jagged, chaotic, this one was eerily geometric. Flattened at two poles, slightly hexagonal in profile. And as the world's telescopes turned toward it, something changed in the radio signal. The 1.42 GHz emissions vanished. For 12 hours, silence. Then, a new carrier wave appeared at 15.7 GHz, modulated not in simple binary but in triplets, 3 states per bit, a ternary code. The intervals no longer matched hydrogen lines but matched precisely the timing of Earth's rotation, 23 hours, 56 minutes, 4 seconds per full cycle. Every burst arrived when 3I Atlas crossed the meridian above the Greenwich Prime, as if syncing itself with our time. Some researchers claimed coincidence, others called it recognition. Dr. Lucas Neumann of the Max Planck Institute said quietly during a closed conference call, "If it's synchronizing with us, it's because it already knows where we are." NASA has not confirmed this statement, but a leaked JPL memo references phase-locked timing consistent with external synchronization. 3I Atlas was no longer just approaching the inner solar system. It was stabilizing itself, matching our clock, as if waiting. Here's what we know. The object is slowing continuously, now orbitally captured within the sun's gravity. Thermal oscillations, magnetic polarity, and metallic composition rule out natural cometary models. The radio emissions have evolved from binary to ternary encoding, synchronized with Earth's sidereal day. Here's what we don't: the source of its deceleration or the mechanism generating internal heat, whether the electromagnetic pulses were accidental or controlled emissions, and, most profoundly, whether the synchronization means observation or intention. By November 14, 2025, 3I Atlas had become the most observed object in the solar system after the Moon. Every major telescope on Earth in orbit and beyond was aimed at it. JWST, Hubble, the Subaru Observatory, the Chandra X-ray telescope, each tried to catch a consistent dataset. But for the first time in decades, the instruments disagreed. At 0342 UTC, the Goldstone Deep Space Network received a coherent reflection ping, meaning the object was now radar reflective. Its radar albedo jumped from 0.04 to 0.61, nearly the same as polished steel. The signal bounced back not as noise, but as a single tone, a perfect sine wave at 440 Hz, concert pitch A, an eerie detail for a machine made of math. At nearly the same moment, the ESA solar orbiter 0.18 AU away registered a sudden temperature drop around the object, down to 200 more dK, followed by a rise again within 60 seconds. That swing shouldn't be possible for an inert rock in deep space. It was as if it reacted to being scanned. Minutes later, the Chandra X-ray Observatory lost telemetry for exactly 8 minutes, 11 seconds. Its onboard gyros spiked in torque, as if momentarily hit by a strong magnetic field. When data resumed, the background X-ray flux across the region of 3I Atlas had changed, subtly but consistently. The emission lines now matched the signature of ionized nickel, a rare element in cosmic bodies, but a common alloy component in turbines and fusion chambers. That night, something stranger happened. Amateur radio astronomers in Australia reported faint broadband interference sweeping across the 1.4 to 1.7 GHz range. The pattern repeated every 43 minutes. The timing correlated precisely with the oscillation in the object's heat cycle first reported by JWST. Then, without warning, all official telemetry streams from NASA's open access servers went offline. The notice read only, "Data under review. Updated release pending system verification." For 19 hours, there was silence. No live streams, no orbital updates, nothing. When data finally reappeared, the official orbital elements had changed. 3I Atlas had altered course again. Its vector now intersected Mars' orbit, and, if extrapolated, Earth's orbit 19 days later. At first, this looked like a numerical glitch. But simulations run independently by JPL, ESA, and Harvard's Center for Astrophysics all matched a continuous, sustained acceleration of 0.02 ms2, perpendicular to the Sun's gravitational plane. Meaning, again, it wasn't falling, it was steering. Dr. Shankar in Bangalore went on a record. Every time we look, it behaves as though it's aware of being observed. This is not random physics, it's interaction. By November 15th, the pattern of its radio pulses changed once more. Instead of uniform bursts, they began forming amplitude steps, ascending, then descending, in a shape that eerily resembled the human heartbeat. When plotted on an oscilloscope, each series contained 72 beats per minute. Normal human resting heart rate. Coincidence or deliberate mimicry? Meanwhile, planetary sensors picked up faint atmospheric disturbances on Mars. The Trace Gas Orbiter reported a spike in ionization directly along the predicted path of 3I Atlas. For 10 seconds, the Martian magnetometer registered a uniform oscillation, like a tuning fork in vacuum. Across social media, speculation exploded. It's mapping us. It's a probe. It's artificial. But the official agencies said nothing. NASA declined all press requests. ESA stopped publishing Solar Orbiter's raw telemetry feed. And then, just as silence began to feel normal, another pulse arrived, stronger, sharper, different. Encoded within the ternary signal was a single timestamp, 11 Nov 2025, 0 Wasor UTC. The day 3I Atlas had first been rediscovered. It wasn't counting forward, it was counting back. Here's what we know. The object reflects radar waves, emits magnetic pulses, and changes temperature in response to observation. It appears to steer autonomously, maintaining acceleration inconsistent with natural physics. The signal now contains data resembling human biological rhythms and timestamps referencing its reappearance. Here's what we don't: the mechanism controlling its trajectory and magnetic emissions. why its communication mirrors human biological patterns, and whether its countdown means an arrival, an echo, or a beginning. On November 18, 2025, 3I Atlas crossed Mars' orbital path. Yet no one saw the encounter directly. For the first time since its rediscovery, every deep space telescope experienced simultaneous data corruption. Hubble's imaging stream froze. JWST switched into safe mode. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter logged 17 unexpected reboots within 2 hours. Officially, NASA called it a software synchronization anomaly. But engineers who spoke anonymously described it differently. They said the systems didn't fail. They shut down, voluntarily. The only uninterrupted feed came from a small, forgotten camera aboard Maven, orbiting Mars at 6,000 kilometers altitude. Its ultraviolet imager captured 11 frames before autolock disengaged. In the final frame, a luminous arc appeared above Mars' northern terminator. A faint crescent of bluish plasma, about 160 kilometers wide. No dust plume, no impact trail. It wasn't descending, it was holding position. Maven's magnetometer recorded something else. A stable, circular magnetic field, 0.9 millitesla, hovering above the ionosphere. The shape matched the curvature of 3I Atlas. For 7 minutes, Mars had a new artificial aurora. When the data reached Earth 13 minutes later, every channel analyzing it went dark. NASA servers began pushing blank telemetry packets. The only confirmation came from the Indian Space Research Organization, ISRO, which leaked their mirrored copy before the feed disappeared. The data contained one last line of code embedded in the telemetry header. Source: unknown. Encoding: 3-phase sequence. It wasn't from Maven, it was injected into Maven's stream from external origin. When decoded, the inserted signal produced a sequence of repeating numerals: 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128. Then silence. To any computer scientist, that's binary expansion. To mathematicians, it's growth by doubling. To biologists, it's cell division. Was it a pattern or a message? The following day, infrared data from ALMA and Gaia confirmed that 3I Atlas had changed shape. Its geometric cross-section, once roughly hexagonal, had elongated by nearly 30 meters. No debris, no mass loss, just expansion. Slow, deliberate. The object was reconfiguring itself, and then came the whisper in the data. At 04:17 UTC on November 19th, the Green Bank telescope detected a faint sideband in the 15.7 GHz carrier. The new signal wasn't random noise. It was amplitude-modulated sound, subsonic when converted into audio range. After filtering, it formed a low, pulsing tone between 0.8 and 1.3 Hz. When spectrographs visualized the tone, it looked familiar, like a waveform seen on a medical monitor. Heartbeat again. Slower this time, around 48 beats per minute. For hours, no one could explain it. Then, at 8-hour UTC, the pulse synchronized exactly with Earth's magnetic field oscillation, our planet's natural Schumann resonance at 7.83 Hz, scaled down by a harmonic factor of 6. That meant one thing: the emission wasn't random. It was in training, matching frequencies, locking onto Earth's magnetic rhythm. As the hours passed, global magnetometers began registering microfluctuations, tiny but synchronized, every time 3I Atlas transmitted. Even ground-based instruments in Alaska and Finland recorded the pattern. The object, now 0.68 AU from Earth, was subtly coupling with the planet's field, like a tuning fork finding resonance with another. Dr. Neumann from Max Planck wrote a private note to colleagues, later leaked to Reddit. It is not signaling to us. It is harmonizing with us. By November 20th, the pattern evolved again. The intervals shortened, the emissions intensified, and the frequency drifted slowly, precisely toward the band used by terrestrial communication satellites. 3I Atlas wasn't just visible anymore. It was audible. Here's what we know. The object's path intersected Mars without collision, producing a persistent magnetic field and aurora. It injected encoded data into a spacecraft's telemetry feed. Its emissions synchronize with both human biological rhythms and Earth's electromagnetic frequency. Here's what we don't: whether the harmonic link is passive resonance or deliberate calibration, the meaning of the doubling sequence embedded in MAVEN's data, and if the growing structure around 3I Atlas is simply physics or the beginning of construction. By November 23, 2025, the object once called a comet had entered 0.48 AU from Earth inside the orbit of Venus. Its brightness increased fivefold in 2 days, but not because of sunlight. Spectroscopic analysis from the Keck Observatory showed no typical reflectivity spikes. The luminosity came from within, peaking at 510 nanometers, a pure cyan glow, consistent with ionized oxygen. No comet emits that wavelength. No natural process sustains it for hours. The world's telescopes were already blind to half the data. NASA's public feeds were temporarily offline, and ESA's solar orbiter had switched to encrypted channels. But smaller observatories kept recording, and amateur astronomers filled the silence. Through their composite imagery, a new shape emerged. 3I Atlas was no longer an ellipsoid. It had flattened along its poles, developing 6 equidistant ridges spiraling toward a dark central core. In infrared, those ridges pulsed faintly, synchronous, measured, alive, every pulse aligned with a corresponding microdisturbance in Earth's magnetosphere. When the object brightened, our magnetic field fluctuated by 0.03 nanotesla, barely perceptible but globally consistent. The heartbeat that had started as a radio curiosity was now planet-wide resonance. At 0210 UTC on November 24th, the HARP facility in Alaska confirmed that the Schumann resonance amplitude spiked by 17%. The spike repeated every 43 minutes, precisely matching the object's earlier temperature cycle recorded weeks prior. Coincidence or synchronization? The more the frequencies converged, the stranger the atmospheric behavior became. Weather satellites observed spontaneous micro-auroras over the Pacific and parts of northern Europe. Short-lived flashes of turquoise light in clear skies. There were no geomagnetic storms, no solar flares. And yet, ionospheric readings matched those recorded during major coronal mass ejections. Something up there was inducing electromagnetic resonance without the sun. Meanwhile, across the Pacific, the Deep Space Network's Canberra station reported phase jitter in all signals within the X-band. Not noise, a modulation, faint but repeating. When demodulated, the interference formed a binary to ternary pattern, an echo of the same signal 3I Atlas had been sending for weeks. But this time, it wasn't coming from the comet, it was reflected back from Earth's ionosphere. That meant our planet had become a mirror, part of the communication loop. Dr. S. Martinez from the European Space Astronomy Center noted in her private memo, "We are no longer observing, we are participating." For the first time, ground-based magnetometers began reporting rhythmic deflections measurable without amplification. At 783 Hz, the fundamental Schumann frequency, the amplitude doubled and held steady for almost 6 minutes. That had never happened in recorded history. In that same window, a brief, narrow radio burst appeared on the 1.42 GHz hydrogen line, identical in timing to the first signal detected from 3I Atlas weeks ago. It came from the direction of the comet, but the signal structure, checksum, phase, and energy profile was slightly altered, as if it had been answered. SETI analysts called it phase inversion. Whatever was transmitting was now sending data perfectly, inverted relative to the original stream, bit for bit, polarity for polarity. A response. When mapped into coordinates, the signal triangulated not to deep space but to a point above Earth's atmosphere, approximately 35,900 km altitude directly over the equator, the exact height of the geostationary belt. That location was empty. No satellites, no debris fields. Just silence, but for 9 minutes the background cosmic noise dropped to zero. The void listened. When the data ended, 3I Atlas dimmed sharply, its brightness decreasing by 40% in 1 hour. JWST's final infrared frame, taken just before NASA locked its data archive, showed faint concentric rings of heat dispersing outward from its surface, like ripples spreading from a stone dropped into still water. Something had completed, or begun. Here's what we know. 3I Atlas is producing sustained internal luminosity, synchronized with Earth's magnetic and atmospheric systems. Electromagnetic resonance between the object and the planet is measurable on a global scale. A secondary, inverted signal originated near geostationary altitude after Earth's ionosphere began reflecting the original transmission. Here's what we don't. Whether Earth's magnetic field is being used as a communication medium or an instrument, what caused the synchronized glow events in our atmosphere, and perhaps most urgently, if the silence that followed was natural or intentional. By November 26, 2025, 3I Atlas had entered a kind of suspension. Its luminosity faded to a constant low glow, dim, steady, almost calm. The electromagnetic interference that had rippled through Earth's field for days suddenly vanished. Magnetometers went flatline. The Schumann resonance returned to normal. For the first time in weeks, the planet seemed quiet. But astronomers weren't. At 0533 UTC, data from the Lagrange 2 point, the position shared by JWST and several solar observatories, showed that the object had stopped moving entirely relative to the Sun. It was holding a stable orbit at 0.47 AU, perpendicular to Earth's orbital plane. A perfectly fixed station in a place where physics allows no rest. Natural objects don't stop. They drift. They fall. They obey momentum. This one resisted it. Then came a new signal. Not radio this time, but gravitational. The Laser Interferometer Space Antenna, LISA, still in prototype testing, detected micro-vibrations, ripples, emanating from the region of 3I Atlas. Amplitude, 1 cardinal 21 meters per meter. Frequency, 2.4 Hz. Too small for cosmic cataclysms. Too structured for noise. Each pulse matched the duration of a human heartbeat. Again, coincidence maybe, but the waveform pattern mirrored something chillingly familiar. The structure of a medical electrocardiogram. 3 peaks, 1 trough. Regular intervals. When overlaid with the earlier radio emissions, the pulses aligned perfectly, delayed by 8 minutes and 17 seconds, the exact one-way light travel time from the object to Earth. Meaning, the heartbeat wasn't symbolic, it was a timed response. At that same moment, the Gaia Observatory recorded a faint, symmetrical expansion of dust around 3I Atlas. Unlike typical comet tails, this material wasn't being ejected, it was being arranged. The pattern expanded radially, forming 6 thin, evenly spaced plumes, geometrically perfect, each aligned toward a specific point in the inner solar system: Venus, Earth, Mars, Ceres, Jupiter, Saturn. Not random alignment. Directional precision within 0.01 degrees. Scientists scrambled for explanations. Some suggested magnetic alignment to planetary fields. Others proposed photon pressure resonance. None fit the data. Because 3I Atlas wasn't radiating heat anymore. It was absorbing it. Infrared instruments showed its surface temperature dropping rapidly, from 310 K to 150 K, pulling thermal energy from surrounding space faster than radiation laws allow. JWST caught faint energy depletion around it, as if the region of space itself were being cooled. And then something extraordinary happened. The signal that had haunted SETI for weeks returned louder than ever, but it wasn't directed toward Earth this time. It was directed away. At 0612 UTC, all major observatories detected a powerful, ultra-narrow band transmission aimed toward the outer solar system. Its frequency, 1.42 GHz, again, the hydrogen line, humanity's chosen channel for interstellar greetings. The beam lasted precisely 108 seconds and carried a repeating string of numbers, 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, the Fibonacci sequence. The mathematical pattern of growth, the code of biology, of symmetry, of life itself. The message ended abruptly, the glow dimmed, and 3I Atlas resumed motion, this time accelerating outward, away from the sun, retracing its previous path toward the constellation Lyra. No further signals, no further anomalies. Just motion, silent, deliberate, final. Over the next 36 hours, its acceleration grew to 0.12 ms2, unnatural, constant thrust. Within days, it would exceed solar escape velocity again. The world had less than a week of visibility left. Dr. Shankar, the first to describe it as an engine running idle in the dark, wrote one final note in her lab log before communications went restricted. It came back to synchronize, not to communicate. Maybe we were the data point it needed. She never published again. Here's what we know. 3I Atlas, stabilized in an impossible orbit, emitted gravitational pulses resembling biological rhythms and directed a final hydrogen line transmission toward deep space. Its final broadcast encoded the Fibonacci sequence, an unmistakable mathematical construct of life. It is now accelerating outward at non-gravitational velocity, leaving the solar system once more. Here's what we don't. Whether its return was an experiment, a calibration, or a surge. Why it mirrored our biology and harmonized with our planet's electromagnetic field. And above all, whether the message it sent back into the dark was a farewell or a signal of success. By November 30th, 2025, 3I Atlas was already beyond 1.1 AU and accelerating. Its cyan glow had faded completely, leaving only a small, cold silhouette against the stars of Lyra. No tail, no heat, no reflection. On optical scans, it appeared almost invisible, yet somehow instruments could still hear it. Not radio, not optical, something else. Faint, rhythmic modulations embedded inside the background microwave radiation itself. The signature appeared first in data from the Atacama Cosmology Telescope, which was mapping the cosmic microwave background, CMB. The noise floor had shifted by 0.004%, producing a pattern. 3 repeating peaks followed by silence. When the data was filtered, the modulation matched exactly the structure of the earlier heartbeat wave from 3I Atlas. It was no longer transmitting, it had left an imprint. Analysts from MIT and the European Space Agency independently confirmed that the anomaly was localized, only visible in the region of sky where 3I Atlas now traveled. When the telescope turned away, the signal vanished. When it turned back, it reappeared. Space itself seemed to remember where the object had been. Dr. Meera Shankar described it before her sudden removal from the Mars communication team. This isn't emission. It's residue, like radiation echo, but it behaves like information, not energy. In simpler terms, the vacuum had been encoded. NASA's Deep Space Network attempted one final ping at 8.4 GHz. The echo came back exactly 8 minutes, 17 seconds later, the same delay as before, but weaker, distorted, split into 2 identical copies separated by 3 milliseconds. A duplication effect impossible under standard radio physics. One signal came from the comet's projected position, the other from directly behind Earth. Triangulation confirmed no physical source in that direction. The reflection seemed to emerge within the magnetosphere itself, as if our own field had stored the signal and played it back. By then, private observatories began reporting data corruption across unrelated instruments. Magnetometers displayed loops of repeating timestamps, each one beginning at 11 NOV 2025 JWST, the same time code embedded in 3I Atlas's original pulse. Computers synchronized to atomic clocks began desynchronizing by 108 microseconds every time the signal region crossed the meridian. The same number again, 108, the duration of its final transmission, 108 seconds, 108 microseconds. Echoes nested within echoes, and then, the strangest discovery of all. The James Clerk Maxwell telescope detected a narrow optical reflection near 3I Atlas's outbound vector. The reflected light wasn't from the object, but from behind it. Spectral analysis showed it was sunlight, bounced off something translucent, roughly 200 meters wide and hexagonal in symmetry. The reflectivity matched aerogel composites, synthetic materials used in human spacecraft insulation. But the object was WO4 AU beyond 3I Atlas, traveling with identical velocity and orientation. A shadow companion. Whether it had detached or been deployed, no one knew. It produced no emissions. It merely followed, silent, precise, a ghost of whatever 3I Atlas had been. By December 2nd, all remaining transmissions ceased. The comet or probe was gone. It had left behind only anomalies, residual harmonics in Earth's ionosphere, an unexplained data pattern in cosmic background radiation, and that faint, translucent hexagon drifting outward into interstellar space. When the International Astronomical Union finally issued its reclassification notice, it did so quietly. 3I Atlas was no longer listed as a comet. Its new designation read simply, Unidentified Interstellar Object, Type 3. No press release, no conference, just a line in a database. In the days that followed, global magnetometers stabilized and the auroras vanished. But the Earth's Schumann resonance, our planet's electromagnetic heartbeat, remained slightly elevated by 0.3 Hz. Not much, barely measurable, but permanent. When journalists asked NASA if the anomaly was related to 3I Atlas, they received a single-sentence reply. No further data will be released pending independent verification. Dr. Neumann, who had quietly archived thousands of gigabytes of private telescope data, summed it up in his final public statement before his lab went dark. If it came here to study resonance, it succeeded. If it came to leave something behind, it already did. Here's what we know. 3I Atlas has departed the solar system on a hyperbolic trajectory toward Lyra, leaving measurable electromagnetic and data anomalies behind. A secondary translucent structure, 200 meters wide, continues to follow in its wake. Earth's electromagnetic resonance has permanently shifted, coinciding exactly with the object's departure. Here's what we don't: whether the shift is harmless or part of a larger signal chain we've only begun to perceive. If the faint residual patterns in the cosmic background are mere artifacts or instructions waiting for a reply. And whether, in watching it leave, we truly understood which side of the observation we were on.